Enshrouded is only the second of three survival crafting games that I've ever looked forward to out of the plethora of them. World being the last video I did, the first of those, and the third one being Nightingale, mostly for its aesthetic and idea of portal hopping to entire different worlds. However, this video is about Enshrouded itself. So you can say that as a non-fan of crafting survival games, I've been eating fairly well with these recent releases, albeit all three of these in heavy early access, as we'll get into later in this review with some of the shortcomings. But overall, Enshrouded has been nothing but an extremely positive and fun experience for me that just leaves me wanting more. Anyways, as I said before, Enshrouded is more akin to an action RPG that has crafting survival tacked onto it, and I'm really thankful for that. The initial map and play area we have is absolutely huge, and this is where I'll start with Enshrouded and the other games it really borrows from and genres here to make it, what makes Enshrouded unique in this broad genre that is crafting survival. It immediately reminds me of the most recent Legend of Zelda's title, and I'm of course talking about Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. You start off on one side of the map, kind of in a bottom corner along the side. As you work your way through the tutorial area, you come to a place where the game advises you to build your first base and learn the crafting mechanics of the game. Well, and then it directs you towards one more portion, which is this broken bridge, and it tells you you have to move around it. From this viewpoint, you can see how Enshrouded draws its inspiration from Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. It's just the overall world's design. You are starting up on a higher plateau of the game space. Down below you is a wide swath of land covered in the Shroud, one of the main mechanics of Enshrouded, the, main antagonist, I suppose you would say. Then vast beyond that, you have some more hills that go up, and then even further in the distance, you can see these tall mountain peaks with castles and other ruins on them. Well, it's just this sort of brilliant design, which is the best part of Breath of the Kingdom and Tears of the Kingdom, I think, is just how it drives you forward to continue exploring, and Enshrouded really, really, really does this well. I'm not a fan of Zelda titles outside of Majora's Mask. They just don't really click with me. But the world design was brilliant in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. And it continues here by proving how brilliant it is. And it continues drawing its deep inspiration from that, by providing the player with a craftable wingsuit. So your glider that almost every open world game has anymore because of Breath of the Wild and other titles after it. Traversal is also augmented by a grappling hook, allowing some fun and smart design in the interiors as well as some exteriors and some other locations, which I'll get to covering in a bit. But as for world design, you can really feel that Enshrouded is not procedurally generated and that it is handcrafted with a lot of care. Now, part of the world design is the shroud that covers large swaths of the world, as well as various interiors and some cave systems and kind of a few underground locations as well. This is like a suffocating fog or a mist. Starting off, you can only enter the shroud for 5 minutes at a time, needing to find special lanterns that help replenish your inner fire to continue your mission to save this land. Various things throughout the world can help increase your time that you can spend in the Shroud, from taking certain skill points, skill nodes, using your skill points on those within your tree, to leveling up your flame altars, which are your base locations, and strengthening yourself with various potions or temporary boosts to your time. Within some of the areas of the Shrouds, you'll find these objects that you do need to chop down like it's a tree, the root of it. Literally cut off this root, which is causing this shrouded blight, and it'll make some areas now safe, though not fully remove the shroud from everywhere, but it will create safe havens within the larger shroud as a whole. This is a kind of fun mechanic that really kind of draws you that draws from various different harsh regions other survival games have, but here it's just the Shroud. It's just suffocating you. You're going to need to venture into it, and you'll venture into it a lot, be it for quests or just random places you can discover, or just hints to find powerful items to make your bases fancier with new, I don't know, materials you can build your base out of. But yeah, you're going to be going into the Shroud a lot. You'll be traversing through the Shroud to try to get to the other side. So, yep, you're going to have to get used to this mechanic whether you want to or not. Combat is another really fun point, and it's kind of another thing that borrows from Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. You do have technically plenty of options here. You have swords, axes, maces, two-handed maces, bows, magic wands, and magic staffs you can use to cast various spells via charges. On top of this, you will have different types of armor geared towards different play styles. From heavy plate armor that gives you constitution and stamina boosts to help defend, to some other plate armor that's more useful for if you're going to be dealing damage as a melee fighter. Following this up, you do have some leather armor for leather armor and other creature material armors that you can use if you want to be like a roguey style play, or ranged combat with a bow. And then you do have various magic type armors such as cleric robes or mage robes if you're going to be healing or dealing magic damage as your primary source of damage. Though if you want to wear heavy plate armor and cast magic, go for it. You're just going to kind of be splitting up your skill points on the skill tree. It was at this point that I really realized that Enshrouded is kind of geared towards playing with some friends. A tank with plenty of constitution and stamina to keep the attention of enemies and blocking. Another person in melee in their own plate or other armor to help them be dexterous to dodge attacks, to party members looking to engage from range with bows or magic. Now, every encounter does seem to be possible solo, but at certain points it's very obvious with the numerous different types of resistances enemies can have, as well as their weaknesses of the mob types being grouped together, that a party was designed to be used. And it's really the resistances that get to that, because you can kind of get around weaknesses by just dealing damage to them. You're not going to be doing extra, but it's the resistances that really hurt, that really limit you when you're, a tank melee fighter, whereas someone using magic would just use a different spell. Let's go back to the vaults and ruins and towers that you see in the distance that you want to traverse to, you want to explore to and understand. As I said before, the world of Enshrouded is handcrafted, so there's no procedural generation you see that's, common in these types of games. So everything feels like it does have plenty of meaning. Vaults house other remaining humans for you to recruit to your cause in lifting the Shroud, such as the aforementioned Carpenter. Currently, there are just 5 other humans that can be NPCs, those others being a blacksmith, an alchemist, a hunter, and a farmer. All 5 are used for various upgrades for various playstyles, as well as new ways to decorate your bases or craft weapons and armor, to potions, to foodstuffs, to help you fight back enemies that you will face. The last 2 vaults you venture into were real treats though, large temple-like ruins with environmental dangers and puzzles to solve and traverse, unlock your way through to awaken your NPC. Unfortunately, like I said, there's only 5 NPCs, so there's only 5 vaults, and only the last 2 are the good ones. It is an early access, so it's a really early build of the game, so hopefully this does mean we can look forward to more in the future. Other ruins, and specifically the spires, have environmental puzzles as well, with the former also housing enemies to fight along the way. It's a nice crafted world with a lot of great ideas. Unfortunately, they don't number that many currently. Soon you'll start realizing that most dilapidated villages or solo buildings, they feel mostly the same, and that's because they are. They're just kind of pre-built areas with the same floor layouts, with the same basements that you'll go into. And this is kind of where it feels like they pulled from Ubisoft open world games. Your map is just going to be cluttered with locations of interest to go to. And, I mean, while there is a ton to go through, you're not going to really care too much about the salt mines that you can go to. There are definitely a few points of interest that are worth waiting through all the Shea for to get to. Now, I am realizing that this impression is kind of all over the place, but that's bound to happen with a game that borrows from multiple other games and genres. Enemy variety does leave something to be desired. You'll consistently run into the same enemy variety over and over and over again, with a rare new one added every few hours of gameplay, and then back to just it all being kind of samey. And that new enemy does throw a nice wrench into it until you get used to it. But here it's also kind of where combat shows that it was also lifted from the recent Zelda titles, from the familiar lock-on system with the same triangle above their head to each weapon having the same simple 2 or 3 swing combo. There's a light parry mechanic, a stance to manage and not get dazed with. It's all familiar, which isn't a bad thing. Bosses are a blast to fight against as well, at least the first 3 or 4 times you come up against them. Then it's more of a mindless fight of repeating the same thing over and over and over again as you rinse and repeat these boss encounters often. Though, and I mean, I do realize I have some criticisms here or there for it, but I really do like the game, so I figured let's just talk about something that really makes Enshrouded astounding, though. As I feel like I'm coming off as very critical on each item, while I generally do really like the game. The visuals itself, just something else. Now, this isn't the best looking game out there, but aspects of it are truly outstanding. One thing being the lighting and how the lighting interacts with the fog or the mist in the shroud. It's absolutely stunning. Well, the only real issue I have with the visual style is the player model is kind of meh, and they come off as like kind of short and squat. All the normal humans do. Other designs and models are done great, from the various wildlife to the different enemies. I'm talking about some standard looking wildlife such as wolves and rabbits, then you start getting to more fantastical designs like walking mushroom colonies. The world is voxel based as well, meaning you kind of can just dig anywhere you want to, and it, does it in not really an ugly way. It's smooth and looks natural for the most part, with how the ground bends for you. For example, you could dig from the top of a mountain down into the ruins below you if you so wanted, skipping everything to get to the treasure room. That really does remind me of the old Red Faction games where you could just dig through as long as your tools have the durability for it. So yeah, building your base is all the better for this as well. From small or large prefabs, like I said before, you can use different material types, so rough wood, rough stone, tarred wood, shroud wood, which looks like a dark wood. It's all there. Metal, mossy, mushroomy stone buildings, bone mausoleums, whatever. And aside from the different prefabs, you also have singular block placement, which lets you customize even more. But while this is all really impressive, what makes it even more impressive is, you would think that this is an engine that would be Unity or Unreal 4 or 5 or maybe even Godot. You'd think that with how well the game looks. But that's not it at all. It's a completely different engine. Keen, the studio behind Enshrouded, has built their own engine from the ground up to support their vision for Enshrouded. This is pretty much unheard of. While some large publishers will create engines to use across all of their studio's games, a lot of them and a lot of developers will still use something like Unreal or Unity just because they're so well put together and they're highly customizable. No, Keen just decided to make their own engine for Enshrouded. And it's not a bad engine, it's a fantastic engine. And the fact that they got it to work, and work extremely well, while it being based on the idea of voxels within the game, is truly amazing. And so, just props to Keen for what they were able to do with this title. Not only have they made a fun title, rough around the edges in some places need some work still. That's all stuff that can be done. But to do it in their own custom built from the ground up engine is something unheard of. Overall, I'm super pleased with Enshrouded. Sure, there are points of pain that I think can be ironed out, such as a lack of enemy variety early on, or just a lack of enemies being added as you move through it, to a lot of the ruined towns you coming off as really samey, with the different buildings just kind of being copy and pasted so you know what you're looking at. It kind of reminds me of like Starfield's open world stuff, though that's lended to entire prefabricated structures and some procedural generation. This is a little bit different. I can kind of, understand why it would need to be done. But overall, for a handcrafted world, it's fantastic. The combat is refreshing for a crafting survival game. It's not the most in-depth, but you can dodge, block, you have combos, plenty of weapons to use, playstyles to do, stealth if you want to try to manage it, which doesn't really work. It's great to play with friends in a party, as you can build that typical party makeup of tank, melee damage, ranged physical damage, and magic damage, or a healer or something like that. It really, really is a great title in early access. I feel like all of the pain points can be easily overlooked. I did just want to keep exploring all of the map markers that kept popping up, even though I knew, well, this probably isn't going to be really interesting to me, but in the off chance that it is super interesting, I'm going to love it. And even the few times, maybe the 1 out of 5 times where you happen across something just really, really awesome, it's absolutely worth going through all of those other ones. It kind of makes me feel like I'm exploring in, say, almost kind of like an Elden Ring by FromSoft. It almost felt like I was exploring that, though. It didn't really have all the map markers and stuff, which kind of ticks my OCD off into full-blown mode, so I have to go see it and what it is to check that off of my map and whatnot. But yeah, overall, Enshrouded, fantastic. It's definitely a crafting survival title that I feel like I was justified in looking forward to. I look forward to returning to it again sometime in the future after they have their next content patch. Overall, definitely check it out if you want a combat with various styles based crafting survival game that's light on the survival but heavy on the crafting. If you want, check it out. It's absolutely worth it.